This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Doesn't federal government backing of Brisbane's Olympics confiscate $30 billion off North and Central Queensland's coal and copper miners, cane and cattle farmers, giving it to the IOC, whose Paris opening ceremony was, I quote, an orgiastic pagan ritual denigrating Christianity? Treasurer, didn't Christians abolish slavery, create from a brutal imperium, Pax Romana, from the Dark Ages, the Renaissance? Didn't communism murder 78 million people? Didn't Christian Gorbachev, the Pope, the Charlie Wilson's Christians abolish communism? Didn't pagan rituals
Oh, God. Sir, this is a Wendy's,
sacrifice children
please.
to the tree and crocodile god?
Still going.
Oh,
Anyway.
God.
Answer the question. Treasurer, come on.
Was this to the Treasurer? Oh, God.
Or was it? I think it was to the Treasurer. Anyway, Who knows what the fuck it was. It was just incredible, wasn't it? Did you? Yes, Treasurer Jim Chalmers. And this question was, let's just remind folks about funding for the Brisbane 2032 Olympics. And I thought initially I was very impressed because I saw the transcript of this question in Question Time from Bob Katter. And I was like, did he just come up with this? But no, he is reading from like a question that is written down, which begs the question, did he write this himself or is there some like equally insane staffer writing this question for him in his office? Will we ever know? Who knows?
I remember the actual, bullshit right-wing culture war about the Paris opening ceremony and the idea that
being
there was
satanic.
some kind of pagan and satanic. Indeed, I did not realize that Katter would buy into that stuff. So is he opposed to the Brisbane Olympics generally, or is he saying because of the outrage that we saw in Paris that the IOC shouldn't be getting any of the money now? Okay.
The Katters have actually been pretty vocally opposed to the Olympics. There was a joint press conference, believe it or not, with the Queensland Greens and the Queensland Katters about the Gabba Stadium rebuild and, the Olympics proposals in that regard. And so they've been opposed to it, like primarily I think from the angle that this is city bullshit and it's all for Brisbane and there's nothing for the regions, which fair enough. But now I guess they've got an added like culture wars element. So why not just go the hell off? Which I think it's also, I mean, obviously it's nonsense, but even the things where they're like, it was mocking the Last Supper, but then it turns out the artist was like, that wasn't even meant to be the Last Supper. This was inspired by a completely different piece. It has nothing to do with that. But Cooker's going to cook, I guess. The video is also hilarious.
Rituals sacrifice children to the tree and crocodile gods. I mean,
he's satirizing himself, right? What do you mean the tree and crocodile gods?
And if any state is going to worship tree and crocodile gods, it's fucking Queensland, man. I mean, that's kind of cool.
This is such a rich text. There's so much to be studied here. Like, he leaves us so many rabbit holes to go down. He fits it all in one question. This is the mastery of Mr. Bob Katter. And, people around him could only watch in awe. If anyone's watched the video, Libby, and Greens MP for Ryan, Elizabeth Watson-Brown, is sitting directly behind him. And as he goes on, you can see her face, just her eyes just grow bigger and bigger and her hand just over her mouth like, oh my God, what is going on? I saw someone reply and be like, oh, look at the indies behind him. And that is Libby Erasure, and I won't fucking have it. Her reaction was absolutely hilarious.
What is going on in the seat of Kennedy? Are people happy with all this? Are they like, I mean, I know he's a character and he's been there forever, but like when you see shit like that, do you go, maybe Bob has served his purpose. Maybe he needs to be put out to pasture.
Oh,
I
what
don't know.
are they going to get?
Crazy.
What better are they going to get? They're going to get a major party MP who's going to fucking go in there and not fight for the regions. All they no one is going to fight for the regions like the Katters in people's minds. And so if you're in the seat of Kennedy, you're probably like, look, well, he may have gone on that weird rant about pagan rituals and satanic sacrifices and the tree and crocodile gods. But the point was he wants $30 billion for the fucking regions and not a stadium in Brisbane. So go off, Bobby. We love you and we're going to vote for your son and your son's son and your son's son's son.
But not your daughters, if you have any. And not your gay half-brother.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
got a primary vote of 41.7% in Kennedy.
I guess that's not as big as I thought it might be. It's pretty good.
That'll do just fine. It's 63-36 in the two-party preferred. The Greens sitting on 6.4% in the seat of Kennedy. So,
just enough to get reimbursed, so Bob, thanks for that one.
Praise the crocodile gods.
Does the leader of the Greens talk about that? Nah. Preparing to vote once again with the coalition
the Deputy
to
Leader
block
of the Opposition.
a future made in Australian legislation.
We're stuck with the hosts of Chapo Shithouse podcast.
Serious danger to Australia.
And praise Serious Danger, the podcast about green politics in Australia. I am Emerald Moon. That's Tom Ballard. I am, as usual, coming to you from Mianjin, Yuggera and Turrbal country. How are you going, Tom?
I'm good, lassie.
Still in Ballarat. We're going to do this every week. Still in Scotland.
Sorry.
Blah, blah, blah. Are you leaving yet? How long does this fucking thing go for? I'm always astounded at how long these festivals go for.
This is the last weekend of the Fringe. Thank you once again to all the Serious Danger dogs who have come out to the show. There are actually quite a few of them. It's very surprising, and I appreciate that.
That's incredible.
I will remain in the Northern Hemisphere for another month and a half, and I'm touring across the UK and Europe to all the Danger dogs that are in those various locations. Comedy.com.au for all the details if you want to come along and see them on the road. But yes, the Fringe is finally fucking over, thank God.
Well, quick reminder, this show is produced by Michael the Great Griffin, and we love him very much, and also with the help of the Green Institute. This week, we've got a very exciting interview. We talked to the newly announced Green candidate for the Queensland seat of Moreton, wherein the current Labor incumbent, Graham Perrett, just announced his resignation. So we thought he was going to resign, and then he finally fucking resigned, and maybe we're going to win it, especially when you hear Remah speak. She is the daughter of Palestinian refugees. She's grown up among refugees. I think she immigrated to Australia 10 or so years ago and has been really deeply enmeshed in community activism. She has led pro-Palestine protests. She is an incredible speaker and kind of a bit of a force in her community. And the interview that we had with her, genuinely, this is fucking corny, but genuinely at one point she was speaking and I got goosebumps. So that is bloody exciting. We're also talking about why the Greens refused to support Labor's CFMEU legislation before we get to that.
Yes. The Griff, very excited about Remah. He lives in the seat of Moreton. He is the a regular correspondent with the Labor MP, Graham Perrett, often sending him many messages.
Like he hasn't been reported to fixated persons unit yet.
We were talking about Graham Perrett is the guy who early this year I think we talked about on the show, who during the Fatima Payman nonsense said, among Labor MP Graham Perrett, he told the Saturday paper, Bant is an opportunistic, mercenary, vote-harvesting stunt master, and he can go fuck himself, which I don't think is very civil at all.
Really charming, really charming stuff.
Shame. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy, lovely guy. Speaking of lovely guys and girls and everyone in between, we have some new patrons to thank. Thank you for signing up, Damien, Anna, Ryan, the Gentrified Savage, Ella, and a little person by the name of Michael Berkman, my boss.
Real good stuff.
Thanks, Michael, for finally signing up. We were in the same room when he was like, oh, how do I do your Patron thing? I think apparently his family has started listening, which is really lovely. Thank you, Burko. Love and appreciate the support. And maybe he may have signed up for access to this very special episode that we just released this week. We did a deep dive / pun, into what really happened to former Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt when he went for a swim that fateful day. I really enjoyed this episode. I think it was very, very fun, and I found out a few little tidbits about Harold Holt, the man, the Prime Minister, and the mystery that I didn't know before. So I highly recommend to all our patrons to go listen to that one. And if you're not a patron, consider signing up, just $3 a month to listen to that and also help us keep the show going. We would love you very much for it.
I'm going to say a shout out to a particular patron who will remain nameless, who happens to work as a researcher for a well-known polling company, who got in touch in regards to last week's episode. We were talking about the new developments in the new Orcus deal and how horrific Orcus is and what a truly shitty, terrible deal it is, which will almost certainly not produce the submarines and, come with all the bad stuff as well. But we were wondering, where is Orcus in the conversation? How often are people, ordinary people anyway, talking or thinking about Orcus? And this person says, hello, can I answer your Orcus question? In our qualitative research, Orcus constantly comes up unprompted. Across cohorts, people fucking hate it. Even the most conservative white men think it's a fucking deranged idea. Whenever someone talks about needing to cut back on spending on something, someone else jumps in and says something along the lines of, we have hundreds of billions of dollars to blow on submarines. Surely we can afford X, Y, Z. How about that?
There you go. Okay. Good to know. I mean, clearly it has permeated the Australian consciousness, and everyone knows it's fucking stupid. So that is good to know. Glad we have patrons to confirm.
Yeah, well, it's the details, but all you need to know is submarines, it'll take ages, and $368 billion.
$368 billion.
Those probably are things.
Yeah,
that's in people's heads. So good, and maybe a good sign once again. The Greens should be the ones saying we have hundreds of billions of dollars to spend on submarines. Surely we can afford to, I don't know, make sure that people aren't living in poverty in this country. Which we are saying, but we should know that that's good.
We are recording this before the NT election, so we don't know yet what the results are going to be, but we know that we've been very excited about the Greens' prospects there, and regardless of the result, they've fought a bloody good fight. So best of luck, comrades. We look forward to seeing what comes out of that.
Homer! 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 I move that Homer Simpson be our new union president.
Hey, what did this job pay?
Nothing.
Don't!
Unless you're crooked. Woohoo!
All right, message from another patron, Austin. Hey guys, love the pod. Can you talk about the CFMEU administrator legislation that is being pushed through by Labor and Liberal? Would love to hear about the Greens' response to this. Sure thing, Austin. That's exactly what we're going to do.
Yes, we
Thanks
can.
very much for getting in touch. Asked and answered. Very big political story this week. It features everything. Labor and the coalition teaming up, which apparently is fine when they do it, but if the Greens do anything like that, then it's the worst thing in the world. We've got some dirty political attacks on the way for the Greens, some classic union bashing, and also some sad and legitimate concerns about what actually is happening to the CFMEU and ordinary rank and file members. How much have you been following this, Emerald? Because when this sort of broke, you were away and I was co-hosting with Asta Hill, and we sort of talked a little bit and reflected on the CFMEU situation. Have you been following this story much?
Yeah, I have to admit I didn't follow it as much initially, but then I think in the past week with the way that they've pushed through the legislation, first federally and then also this week, actually Queensland Parliament pushed through legislation that effectively mirrors the federal legislation. I think a bunch of other state parliaments have done that to enable the administration of the state branches of the CFMEU, and the way that Labor has conducted itself has certainly made me pay attention. I think I felt initially like, oh, this feels like a convenient excuse to do some union bashing and union busting, and that appears to be exactly what it has been. Not to dismiss the legitimate concerns, obviously, like you said, but it is, as a few folks have pointed out, and maybe we'll get to, interesting the what's the word? The strength and the speed of the response to allegations of corrupt or violent conduct in one type of organisation versus, say, the banks when they're exposed for alleged illegal conduct. But hey,
what are you going to do? All the churches too. Max made the point. There's it's like the government took over those churches that were systematically abusing children for decades. It was all about working together after the Royal Commission to make a solution to make things better. Anyway. But yes, brief bit of background. This is back in July. We had this building bad investigation from 9 Fairfax, the Australian Financial Review in 60 Minutes, revealing, as they put it, that the CFMEU had been infiltrated by bikies and organised crime. There were lots of serious allegations of standover tactics being used and, shitty things being used, misuse of funds, corruption, a bunch of, serious bad stuff, which is totally fair enough. There was a massive fallout. It triggered the resignation of former Victorian Division Leader John Setka and later the New South Wales Assistant Secretary of the Union, Michael Greenfield. Lots of investigations kicked off, including by the police, the AFP, and even APRA, like looking into the union's links to certain super funds has also been floated. And so, yes, the big debate now has been like, okay, what is to be done about this? And as you were saying, we should clarify, these serious allegations. Some people have been sacked who clearly did the wrong thing. Fuck anyone who's been ripping off union members, people who screw over ordinary members, or who corrupt the mission of the labour movement to fight for workers. They are very bad, and that kind of stuff. There should be processes, and people should be held account for that stuff. But yes, it's also very hard to ignore the broader context, which is the CFMEU specifically is left-wing, it's militant, it's very effective, and I think crucially can often be quite antagonistic towards the ALP, particularly the Victorian branches. And there's been cases of this union, challenging Labor. And I don't know, this is my ignorance.
Gasp.
I don't know any – indeed, imagine such a thing. But I can't, and I don't know, all the Labor ministers and who's aligned with what union or whatever, but I can't remember a high-ranking Labor federal MP who is necessarily aligned or the voice of the CFMEU. Can you think of anyone, or have I just can't identify that? I know Tony Burke's SDA.
I'm not sure, yeah.
Bill
Can't
Shorten's the AWU and all that kind of stuff, but I couldn't tell you. Maybe Tony Ayres, the senator or something?
Construction workers rarely, because they're all fucking lawyers. So why would any of them have been in the CFMEU?
You're right. That's probably a good point. So the question being, okay, so how do you do it? What do you do? How do you reform the CFMEU? What should we actually do? How can we be tough on the CFMEU to approach this problem? And I think what you cannot ignore, the fact that the Labor Party is also saying, how can we fend off this political attack, right? How can we neutralise this political attack that we know is coming? Labor union thuggery rather has been a constant attack from conservative forces in Australian politics and media, and they've pretty much shit the bed very quickly in order to approach this issue. Deregistration was taken off the table very quickly because they were saying, well, if you deregister them, then they could keep representing construction workers without any oversight whatsoever, which is basically what happened to the BLF in the 70s when they were deregistered. And of course, that would be the worst possible thing in the world. So they said, we're not going to deregister them.
They could keep doing union stuff.
When there were suggestions that the union might be able to investigate themselves to hold people to account, everyone said that was laughable. That's ridiculous. Of course, when the police do such a thing, then that's good and proper and nice, but unions can't be trusted.
Yeah, then we can trust them to do that, but not the unions, no. Yeah, then it's all about independent investigation.
Surely. Then there was the talk of the divisions that face the allegations being put into administration. So the Victorian Tasmanian branch, maybe the New South Wales branch as well. But then we were told, no, that's no good. That's not enough. That's not going far enough. Then we were told the best approach would be to let the Fair Work Commission go through a process of putting the union into administration. It has processes to do that.
Okay.
There might be appeals to that, to fight that in the federal court, which would be the union's legal right. But you see, it's not swift or tough enough, Emerald. So Labor have come up with draconian anti-union legislation. They've been trying to rush through Parliament to look big and strong and tough on these union thugs, of course, completely forgetting that they are supposed to be the Labor Party and defending working people and should be the strongest defenders of unions in this country. That's the best summary I've got. It's very tough on crime in a different kind of vibe, right? Like rushed reactionary response to anything to look big and tough as a government, right?
That's right. It's the same. Yeah, it's the same pattern of behavior where they identify, and it's the same pattern of behavior. The tough on crime stuff, and I guess that is also tough, like the security, quote unquote, security stuff, and immigration and refugees, where they identify a risk. The risk is gaining significant media attention and also attention from the LNP, who are putting tons of pressure on them. And rather than determine, what actually is the most logical and effective way to and reasonable way to approach this, they just do whatever the LNP wants them to. And they do it as fast as humanly possible because they think that's going to somehow save them from any attacks or political blowback.
But it's also, I mean, again, the CFMEU specifically is an easy one for them to fucking make an example of, right? That allows them to sort of punch left.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
the CFMEU being quite a militantly left union that would challenge them on a bunch of things are most likely to go on strike more than anybody else. It's certainly a convenient target for the centrist / centre-right Labor government to be able to throw overboard pretty quickly, I reckon.
Yes, yeah. One of the only remaining unions, that's right, that runs active campaigns against Labor ministers. And as the saying goes, if provoked, we'll strike.
Yeah. So last week, Labor tried to pass legislation in the Senate. The idea of that was to put the entire CFMEU into administration. So, I mean, again, this is pretty crazy to me. So like the Northern Territory branch, the Queensland branch, they have no allegations against them whatsoever. All these allegations and corruption and bad shit that we're hearing about has come from very specific branches. And yet the government is insisting that, no, the entire national union, all branch across the board, has to be put into administration and be taken over and be basically neutralised as a Labor organisation. I mean, what was Labor in Queensland saying when there were no allegations against the Queensland branch?
I haven't, been paying as much attention as maybe I should have because it's all just so bullshit. But it's still been a week of the LNP standing up and trying to hint at allegations of corrupt conduct or improper conduct or whatever within the CFMEU that are somehow tied to Queensland Labor and to the Queensland government, and that they have responsibility to act on. And so, yes, they're still they're painting them all with the same brush. And the idea is that the CFMEU are thugs and should be deregistered or not allowed to operate anywhere. Right. But I think what is astounding is the lack of mobilisation from CFMEU branches and CFMEU members to this kind of legislation across the country. I guess I was really surprised, and I'm still kind of confused as to why I didn't see hundreds or thousands of CFMEU members outside the gates of Parliament when this was pushed through this week, which you usually would see. They get, they obviously are known for being able to mobilise huge numbers of members very quickly, but for some reason they were completely silent and just, didn't protest this at all. I don't know exactly what is going on there, and maybe they're just so demoralised, or maybe there's some sort of other strategic or bureaucratic reason that they're not doing that. That was kind of what stumped me.
Yeah, well, I listened to this talk that we'll link in the show notes to, an episode of the Solidarity podcast, as a speak from Tom Orsag, who's a member of Solidarity and a former CFMEU member. He was sort of, sounding off, going pretty hard on the whole thing, giving his summary. It's from a couple of weeks ago. He was saying apparently in Queensland they had a meeting and the union leaders said, they want us to go on strike, so we shouldn't go on strike because that's what they want, you see. So we've got to flag them that way.
Right, so they're trying to prove that they're not thugs by just disappearing and being completely silent.
Three-dimensional chess, yes, providing noses. And they've also been, the ACTU has basically said, it's good that they're going into administration. That's fantastic. So, it's just like, it is the Labor movement in Australia being almost completely subservient to the idea of whatever the Labor government wants them to do, it seems to me. Anyway.
Yeah. I've certainly heard that the rumours are that a lot of this is coming from, not inside the House, but potentially from the ASU. That's where where this has all come from, because they don't like the CFMEU and want them taken down as well.
Well, there is some news breaking about some inter-union solidarity on this position that might give us a little bit of hope, but we'll come to that in a moment.
Okay.
So that was last week. The coalition wouldn't support those laws because the laws didn't include a ban on political donations from the CFMEU to parties, i.e. Labor, and campaigns while they're in administration. So they voted against the laws. Murray Watt, the Workplace Relations Minister, said, "We worked on sensible amendments with Senator Michaelia Cash, but she just kept moving the goalposts. This is the strongest legislative action ever taken against a union or employer in our nation's history." Cool brag, bro.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Just remember that.
What? Sorry, what party are you in again? Oh, okay, the Labor one. And you're like, hey, check us out, everyone. We're going hard on a union.
We are the
rule.
most anti-union party ever. Okay.
Cool, bro. Cool story. The Greens also opposed this legislation. We teamed up with the coalition to sink it. Once again, we find ourselves doing that for completely different reasons, but no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
There have been quite a few arguments running from the Greens on this legislation. Okay. First of all, they're saying it undermines the court process that's currently underway. So there is this Fair Work Commission process and the CFMEU has taken him to the courts, and they're sort of saying there's been no explanation as to why we shouldn't just let that process go, carry on, like in,
these are untested
rule of
allegations,
law, natural
still.
justice.
Like,
these are untested
worth
allegations.
noting.
Seems like the process should happen, and of course, the answer to that is, well, that would take too long, and we need a political solution to this ASAP. So fuck the courts, apparently.
Yeah,
they're pointing out the
separation of powers.
Pointed out that decision to put the entire union into administration, how weird that is across the country. But mainly, the argument has been against the overreach of the legislation and the precedent that it sets. The bill goes way too far and overrides basic civil liberties. Max gave a pretty good speech of this and a summary of what the bill can do. It can allow the government to seize control of the CFMEU through an administrator for a minimum of 3 years, permanently ban officials and workers from ever working for a union again without any proof of wrongdoing, which I think is the real stickler here. Fire people, even though, again, without any proof of wrongdoing. Take control of all the union assets, which seems like a real deal. Apparently that's what happened with the BLF was deregistered, like their assets were just frozen and they weren't able to control them for years and years and years. The administrator can decide when or if elections are called, so a complete overriding of democratic rights within the union, and ignore the union's own constitution. So it's quite a lot of power being handed over here. They're also saying that, under this legislation, the precedent could be set that, hey, if Labor loses the next election, Michaelia Cash could be running the CFMEU effectively next election.
Incredible.
What's your summary of all those powers? Do you think it sounds good, Everald, or bad?
No, Tom, I think it sounds bad, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Thanks, mate.
And as I understand it, I mean, I guess it looks like you're about to get to this, but the point is that Labor actually teamed up with the Liberals and the Nationals to make the bill even worse, more anti-worker, because they would rather do that than work with the Greens to make it, slightly to maybe respect the principles of natural justice a little bit more in order to pass it. No, they would rather make it a complete union busting bill.
Very much so. Yeah, we're out there. We're putting our objections out there, our criticisms of it. We're saying we're ready to negotiate. We cite the New South Wales Council for Civil Liberties, those fucking hippies who are also saying, hey, criminality is bad, but we have really big concerns about this. This undermines natural justice. This establishes a dangerous precedent for the trade union movement and basically any membership organisation. This seems really bad. And we said, all right, we're up to negotiating that. And Labor says, nah, fuck you. We're going to work with the famously pro-worker organisation, the Liberal and National Coalition, to address any concerns they may have.
Legislation. Yeah, so just to be clear, they're closer to the LNP. Labor and the LNP are on a unity ticket on workers' rights, on industrial relations, on unions. Let's just remember that in the future, okay?
It really does seem that way. So, some of the concessions they gave away originally was going to be a maximum of 3 years of administration. They turned that into a minimum. Fair enough. They need to give 6 monthly reports to Parliament from the administrator and lifetime bans for dodgy unionists, whatever the fuck that means, I guess.
What is a dodgy unionist, though? Doesn't that mean a lifetime ban? Isn't that still applies to officials who don't have a proven allegation against them?
You certainly
I think that just means CFMEU officials.
Yes, anyone with a tattoo. Yeah. Or anyone who makes Michaelia Cash feel uncomfortable or whatever. Or
anyone with a sticker on their helmet. Yeah.
The coalition failed to extract a legal guarantee barring union political donations, settling instead for an assurance from proposed administrator KC Mark Irving that they would not occur. Yeah, they couldn't ban those political donations because that would be unconstitutional, just FYI.
Oh, yeah.
Also, their focus on that, gives the game away to me. We've got to make sure the CFMEU doesn't give Labor any possible money. Thank you very much. It's okay, dudes, could see where you're coming from here. But yes, as you say, the Greens are apparently, we're the tree Tories, we're the anti-worker people, we don't get Labor rights. But yes, we're trying to fight for unions harder than the fucking Labor Party is.
No, but we're simultaneously the tree Tories and also in bed with the corrupt thugs at the CFMEU, and Setka is our puppet master, actually. So I am starting to get a little bit confused about what's going on here. We're anti-worker, but we're also We are the CFMEU, effectively.
Setka the Puppet Master, Labor's new hit on the Greens. This is a story that came out during all this debate. It all became superfluous anyway, like none of this was required, but this was a full article in the Fairfax papers. Labor will turn on the Greens and paint them as puppets of disgraced former CFMEU boss John Setka.
They were turned. Sorry, where were they facing before? Were we holding hands and now they're turning their back on us? Is that what being nice and looking to us, like being friends with us, looked like? Because fuck.
Labor, what happened?
Anyway.
What happened? You got mean all of a sudden.
Yeah, no.
So they said they're going to run this campaign against us if we kept voting to block this legislation. Now, again, as we say, they eventually said, fuck the Greens, we're going to work with the Tories to pass this legislation, so it's all pointless. But Workplace Relations Minister Murray Watt said in comments to the 9 Fairfax papers, Adam Bandt and the Greens have made the calculated choice to choose their own political benefit over weeding out this behaviour. The Greens may see this as a way of getting more donations from John Setka and the CFMEU, but no amount of money is worth supporting corruption, bullying, sexism and thuggery. And we'll get to the donation thing, but can you just describe the meme that was included in this story here?
Yes.
Exactly what it looks like?
This is a dark, shadowy meme. It has got an image of John Setka, kind of his face up the top, and then these large looming hands superimposed overwards. He's got strings coming from each of his fingers, and attached to those strings is a group of people highlighted in green that happen to be Greens MPs smiling down at you. And so they are the little puppets on John Setka's strings. Now, I just noticed that this is coincidentally just the Queensland Greens. It's only Queensland MPs. And I don't know if that's intentional or if it's just because they happen to have this photo of them all plus Adam. Or not, but yeah.
Yes, and the rest is clearly, a Queensland thing there. I mean, first of all, John Setka looks kind of awesome in this meme, I'm going to say.
He looks epic. I know
he looks epic, and the Greens MPs look really delightful. But
friendly,
this is
smiling.
Having a good time. This is one of the memes, I guess, that were going around. Also, John Setka has resigned to the CFMEU, so it doesn't make any fucking sense. Adam Bandt called Watt's comments delusional. Yes, of course. The Greens will always oppose sexism and bullying, but the minister needs to look in the mirror. Labor took millions in donations from the CFMEU in the last decade, not the Greens. Watt's bill allows the money tap to remain on for Labor even while the union is in administration, yet he has the gall to lecture others. We have accepted donations from the CFMEU, not since 2013, for example.
2013. Well, I think they donated to, for Adam's campaign, right?
I guess so, right after his re-election. Yeah. I mean, the ETU has occasionally donated some money to the Greens over the years. I'm sure it's not much. Adam gave an interview on Radio National where he's saying Labor has taken $6 million over this period that these accusations and investigations we're looking at. Labor accepted $6 million from the CFMEU. Coalition, $175K. Why did the CFMEU give the coalition $175K?
I wonder when that happened. That's weird.
And the Greens, $0.
I mean, this is, and maybe this is the intention. Maybe this is purely a wedge campaign, right? Because the Greens then have to kind of take a position that simultaneously points out the reality, because it just feels so bizarrely insane for Labor to be like, how could anyone take donations or support the CFMEU? You kind of have to be like, you guys are significantly funded by the CFMEU, but then I guess you fall into the trap of making that, acknowledging that is a bad thing somehow, when I don't think that we should fall into the trap of saying, oh, it's bad that you were funded by unions. No. I think if the unions would like to give us some money, maybe not the CFMEU right now, but I would not say no. I would say yes, please.
Yeah, we'll fucking take the cash. Yes, that's as long as we have the donation laws that we have, then that's completely legitimate. I mean, I would accept money for the CFMEU from the branches that shouldn't go into administration. Again, I wouldn't support this kind of national man of the whole thing. But it's bizarre. I mean, again, to me, it's just Labor
unions
betraying.
Should be affiliated, but yeah.
Unions affiliated with the party.
Oh, yes. I don't think unions should have party affiliations, but I think donations, fine.
Sure, right. For the union's sake, rather more than the party's sake. Yeah, right. But yes, it's just sort of Labor betraying their inability to process the idea that the Greens might be standing up on a principle because of something they believe in, and because they think this legislation is cooked and a completely rushed and insane overreaction to these stories. They're like, no, they must be doing it for money. No, you're thinking of yourself there, Labor. I'm sorry to let you know. But also, I just love the idea of this story. Like, so Labor can just go to the media and say, hey, here's an attack campaign we might run.
Yeah.
Here's all the materials that you need. Can you just run this and give us free advertising?
Yeah.
We'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, we want to run this. Like it's like sending out an email to a bunch of supporters and saying, here's the billboard we want to run. Please donate.
Yes.
Like it's the same fucking model. It's so insane. Hey, media suck.
So they're sort of saying that, if we were going to keep blocking the legislation, and again, it didn't come down to our vote, but they were going to target Brisbane, Griffith and Ryan and Macnamara and Richmond, these kind of marginal seats, and sort of say, hey, look, the Greens are siding with this terrible union. I mean, I don't know. Do you think those kind of attacks would have worked? Would they have something cut through? Were these?
I don't know.
This is a taste of what's
really
to come
know.
in the federal election?
Like, I think that maybe there is. I think maybe a lot of people don't necessarily love the CFMEU, but I think at a certain point, they would just, this story gets to a point where they're like, I don't know, sounds like some politics nonsense. Like, yeah. And I also don't think that Labor is going to win votes on the basis of who is closest to the CFMEU, because just like the Greens aren't for probably at least another decade or so going to shake the idea that we're, just the tree huggers or something, they're not going to shake that they're the party of unions, as annoying as that is, given that they're not. Like, that is the public perception.
Well, is this a chance for the Greens? I guess it's like it's a frustrating way for the Greens to identify ourselves, right? Like, we believe in workers' rights. We are we want to be the party of working people. We believe in unions. We believe in stronger and greater powers, and it should be easier to be part of a union. We want to dismantle the kind of anti-worker legislation like the Fair Work Commission and laws that stop people going on solidarity strikes and all that kind of stuff. Like, we want to stop that. But I suppose, full credit to the party for standing up on principle on this particular debate. But I guess maybe it won't go much way to us redefining ourselves as like the party of the worker in people's eyes.
Well, yeah. And I mean, this is the question, like what will be the lasting, what will the reverberations be? Because I just, this is a big fucking union with a lot of members and they will surely know what they will be paying attention. Those CFMEU members will be paying attention to what's happened here. And I just, as they say, God forgives, the CFMEU doesn't. I can't imagine that this would be forgotten, but maybe that's just me being somewhat optimistic and somewhat hopeful. And just like other Labor-affiliated kind of hack groups, maybe they will be like, oh, well, they had to do it. Like, maybe they'll be replaced with more friendly, politically acceptable centrists who are like, well, Labor had to do it, so now we're going to be a nice, friendly union that doesn't stand up for anything ever. I don't know. Well,
it's interesting because there is some reporting around the morning we're recording this from the National Secretary of the CFMEU saying that members are really pissed. They think that Labor is overriding their democratic rights, and there is a very strong movement within the union to disaffiliate from Labor. Now, Labor might well welcome that. They might be into that. But yes, CFMEU could be. I mean, I know members of the CFMEU who fucking hate the Labor Party who are still active within Labor Party politics, just extract as much as they possibly can. Common. Like, they're pretty ruthless in that respect. Yeah. So, but maybe this is a bit of a final straw. Who knows? Yeah.
Maybe one of the only groups that's actually sort of done change from within and actually meant it a little bit. But yeah.
By sheer power. Yeah. Not by like fruitless lobbying, but like actually getting the votes and organising and counting numbers. The Electrical Trades Union, the ETU, will withhold more than $1 million in political donations to the ALP for the next federal election in protest at Labor's moves in regards to the CFMEU and to support the CFMEU court case to appeal this administration decision.
ETU.
That's pretty fucking huge.
I just remembered I had a dream actually the other night that someone was like trying to smear my friends or like smear me or the Greens for having friends who are in the ETU. And in the dream I was being like, the ETU is sick. Like, the ETU has good political positions. Like, and obviously, my friend's an electrician. They're going to be in the ETU. What are you talking about? So I knew the ETU was good in my dream.
In the show notes, we'll put a link to that Solidarity podcast interview. It's worth a listen to Tom Orsag's hot takes on it all. And I thought Guy Rundle wrote a really great piece about this back in July, if you want to have a read of that, on the CFMEU scandal and why a lot of it's a bit bullshit and why we should defend good unions, which is what the CFMEU broadly is. Obviously, shitty allegations, some serious stuff that needs to be held to account, but don't take your eye off the prize, which is the CFMEU fucking gets results. It's saved lives through its organising and fighting for workers. And yeah, we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater here.
Yes.
What happens when we stop existing in the background? When our voices stop echoing old stories that uphold the status quo and we stretch the boundaries of what's possible? My name is Remah Naji, and I'm running for the Greens in the federal seat of Moreton. I'm a mum, education worker, and community organiser. Growing up Palestinian among Palestinian refugees helped shape my sense of justice. For me, standing up for one another is a sacred act. I'm sick of Labour and the Liberals taking our communities for granted. While millions struggle with grocery prices, rents and mortgages, Labour is dishing out billions in tax handouts for billionaires and property investors. And while millions cry out for peace, Labour wouldn't sanction Israel as it carries out a genocide. Let's not wait decades to see justice prevail. I'm here to open closed doors, and if you believe in a better world, why don't you join us?
Authorised by Kay Kara, Queensland Greens, 47 Park Road, Milton.
So, Remah Naji is a mum and education worker and the Greens' newly announced candidate for the federal seat of Moreton, south of Brisbane. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Remah, welcome.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
We're very excited. We wanted to jump right on this. You launched your candidacy just last week, and it certainly made a splash, I think, both in, sort of political and media circles, and particularly among Greens who are keen to see another, Green join the Greensland team in the lower house of Parliament, and the excitement around that growing kind of Greensland wave, wave of Queensland MPs taking Parliament. But I think there's also there's a lot of focus on you in particular as a candidate, and because of who you are and the fact that, you're an activist and you're Palestinian and you're also a former quite active Labor Party member. So there's a lot of, I think, interest in there, which is why we're really keen to get you on the show as well. But maybe the big question to start with is just, how did you get here? How did you go from Labor to running for the Greens, and how does your personal experience and your life experience play into that?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess for a lot of migrant communities, and especially first generation migrants, we gotta experience things ourselves. So we don't have that influence of a family member or a close friend who would give us that, who would influence our direction or influence our moves in one way or another. We gotta make our own way in the countries, in our newly adopted country. So my first exposure to party politics here in Australia was through studying, actually. My honours degree was about articulating citizenship to new Australians. So I had to examine prime ministerial speeches on citizenship, and I looked closely at prime ministerial speeches since the creation of the Citizenship Act in 1949. And that was the first exposure to party politics here in Australia. And given that I only looked at prime ministerial speeches, I only looked at Liberals and the Labor Party. And I was kind of inspired by Gough Whitlam and to some extent Paul Keating. And I thought to myself, oh, wow, the Labor Party is the party for social change, the party that champions diversity. And I just thought to myself, well, as soon as I submitted my honours thesis, I thought, I'm going to join the Labor Party and join like-minded people to fight the good fight for social change. And I have to say that, everything you read it's different than when you experience that yourself. So that was my first, or the reason behind me joining the Labor Party. I think I joined them in 2018, and I was quite active in Graham's campaign in 2019.
So Graham Perrett, the current member for Moreton.
Yes,
for
the current member for Moreton. I was quite active in his campaign in 2019. And in 2020, I did hand out how to vote cards for state election. But it didn't take me long to realize that that's not really what I want to do. And look, don't get me wrong, they loved me. They loved having me.
Of course they did. Who wouldn't?
They loved my skin for their own agenda, to appear like the party of inclusivity, the party of multiculturalism. And I worked so hard to, I worked on motions for state and national conferences, and I worked so hard with other like-minded people to try and influence the Party for Social Change. And for a long time, they were in a position, and they, like always the excuse is like, we're in a position, we'll be stronger when we're in power. But when they were in power, I'm still not inspired. I mean, if anything, I feel like the Labour Party did better than the Liberals. They made people lose faith in politics quicker than any other party.
Wow.
And I think beyond 2021, or before 2021, I started resigning from communities that I was active in. And beyond 2021, I had little to no involvement in the Labour Party in terms of their campaigns, in terms of the other things like attending meetings and all these sort of stuff. I just stayed because I thought I will help pass progressive motions. But I think that distance from the Labour Party for some time made me reevaluate my commitment to the party. So as soon or after the genocide in October last year, it was not hard for me to go, well, look, this party does not speak to my principles. It does not speak to my values. And it was so easy for me to send them my resignation email and just move on. And when I resigned from the Labour Party, I didn't intend to join the Greens. I actually resigned and I wanted to be free of any political party attachments.
Yeah.
Pretty much. But then, and even when I was in the Labour Party, I should mention that I was quite, I was a fan of Jono Sriranganathan. We were together in some, social justice movements. I was pretty thrilled when Max Chandler won in 2022. So I've always, had this, I didn't hate the Greens. The Greens to me were like, you guys are...
So you never belonged in Labour. You didn't hate the Greens enough.
And you know what? There is this narrative within Labour circles that the Greens are too good to be true. And that there's this incrementalism that really, it really annoyed me that, we need to walk tiny, tiny steps towards change. But what these tiny steps are doing, that they're upholding the status quo. This is the same status quo that disadvantages our communities. This is the same status quo that's killing our planet. This is the same status quo that disadvantages ordinary people. So I was sick of that. I mean, when are we going to rock the boat? When are we going to challenge this status quo? So seeing people like Max, like Jono, in power, fighting the good fight and not, holding back or anything, that kind of inspired me. And I've been inspired by them, even when I was a Labour member. So back to after leaving the Labour Party, I was just I was active in the Justice for Palestine movement. And I also watched how the Greens' position on Palestine shifted. It shifted from the Greens were pretty reluctant when it comes to advocating for Palestine for some years. But then I've seen how this shifted towards strong advocacy for Palestinian justice. And this signals strong connection to grassroots. And that inspired me to look more into Greens policies and, learn more about the Greens. And I thought, well, our values do align very much. And I do want to join the Greens in fighting for First Nations justice, disability justice, climate justice, and all the other things that the Greens are fighting for. And on top of that, I also want to join the Greens in calling out a genocide for what it is and for working on sanctioning Israel as it carries out a genocide. And I just decided that I'm going to join the Greens and I'm going to put my hand up for running for federal parliament because I'm sick of people taking our communities for granted. I'm sick of people like me being vague figures in the background. I know that I can, and I wouldn't. I'm not afraid of challenging status quo. I'm not afraid of calling things for what they are and calling out bullshit pretty much. And people need real representation for the things that matter to them. Yeah. And from where I'm coming, I don't see real representation. And for reference, there was a forum with the Palestinian community put together late last year, and Graham Perrett was at that forum. And I remember asking him about, I'm asking you, and this is how I asked him, I am, one of your constituents. And I just want to know, will you ever advocate for sanctioning Israel in Parliament? And he tried to patronize me in ways this is not how party politics works, and we need caucus, and I'm like, okay, you know what? how about behind the scenes? Would you advocate for sanctioning Israel behind the scenes? And even that, he refused to answer this question. Mate, you're not representing me in any way. So you don't want to speak out in Parliament. This is your platform. I don't want your social media posts. I want you to use this platform, Parliament. This is why we vote for you. I want you to use your voice to advocate for the things that matter to me and to my community. You refuse to do that. Even behind the scenes, that was kind of, that was big deal.
Yeah.
I just thought, I'm not afraid of challenging the status quo. I'm not afraid of taking the voices of the communities and be like, this is what matters to the communities. What are you going to do about it?
Yes.
I'm just putting my hand up, challenging everything, all the odds.
Yeah. Oh, well, and I think that's what's so exciting about it is that it is one of those things that it's possible, like, as we'll get into, I think, a little bit later about the prospects of winning Moreton, but it's going to take something huge. And it really is like it's going up against, huge political systemic forces to try and achieve some real change. But that's why I think it's so interesting, what you're saying about Labor's arguments, that it always has to be incremental. And I think so. Graham Perrett, as a lot of folks listening may know, just this week, he finally resigned. There were whispers that he would be resigning ahead of the election, and he finally announced it this week. And in this Guardian article that I saw where he announced that, he actually directly addressed you, having been a former Labor member, and had some really kind of choice words, I think, about, and I agree, quite a patronising tone, right? So the quotes in the article were, "She used to work on my campaigns. I've door knocked with her." He said he had seen how, quote, "perfect can be the enemy of the good," and that, quote, "good government is about progressive, gradual, real change." And if you look back for the last 130 years, all of that in Australia has been delivered by the Labor Party. And there seems to be this sense that, you're just jumping ship for you. He said people have their own, quote, motivations. And so this idea that, you're just being overly ambitious and you're jumping ship to, try and put yourself at the forefront or something. I don't think people are really buying that, you're just doing this because you want to, be famous, build a personal brand. Who knows? I think it's quite clear that you're passionate about actually making change for everyone, not just yourself.
Yeah, I find it kind of weird that people might think someone like me would put my hand up to be famous, given that we know that the amount of attacks that's coming our way. I would rather work behind the scenes and be a back person, like someone who works in the background. But because of the lack of inspiration in politics, I just decided to put my hand up here and take that heat and be like, you know what? Yes, we're going to do it. And interesting, Graham's choice of words, like I used to work on his campaign. I used to volunteer. So you used my free labor to help you get elected. I did not work. I volunteered on your campaign. And this is something that, when they accuse our communities of, things like, we're a threat to social cohesion simply because we're protesting, for instance. Well, we've done everything by the book. You know what? We leafleted for you. We volunteered for you. We door knocked for you. We joined your, your big major party, your big major parties. We did everything by the book, and we have not seen any real change. And now, what's the difference now? Now we know that you're worthless. Your parties are worthless, and they're not. You don't have our interest at heart. So we're going to fight for our place at the table. We're going to fight to make this change ourselves. And I find it kind of interesting that people are, they keep asking me things, or they keep pointing out that you left the party because of Palestine. You're a single issue person. You know what? I've actually been disappointed by the Labor Party for far too long, and this was the final straw. And it just shows how there's lack of understanding of our communities, and all these relationships with diverse communities, they're based on assumptions. Because if you're really connected to those diverse communities, you would know that we struggle with every single thing that everyone else struggles with. Cost of living, for instance, we struggle with we have mortgage stress. We struggle with our rent. We struggle with pretty much everything, and we have concerns about the climate. I mean, we're living on a dying planet. But on top of all of that, we also have other concerns, and we feel like those other concerns are not being addressed, and not being acknowledged, and not being advocated for. And it's funny that they I saw Labour using concepts like social cohesion to undermine the things that we are doing, when the lack of acknowledgement of these concerns actually lead to our isolation. And using concepts like social cohesion, it's such a convenient concept to use against the people you disagree with, because what you're doing is that you're alienating us even further. It's as if the government has no responsibility in terms of responding to the needs of the communities. And I find that quite, it's really sad. It's really sad.
Your response, you need to be quiet in order to maintain that cohesion.
Yeah. But you know what? That's assimilation. You guys are asking me to assimilate, to uphold the status quo that advantages the very few and disadvantages people like me and ordinary people. So no, I'm not going to, go on with your assimilation. It's gentle assimilation. No, I'm here for integration. I'm here for change. I'm here for systemic change for everyone. Because I'm done. We're sick of that. A lot of people are.
There was a crazy Peter Khalil, our new special envoy for social cohesion, had an interview in which he was sort of saying, shitting on pro-Palestinian protesters, saying, oh, they're not out there protesting for Ukraine or protesting about what's happening in Sudan and all this kind of stuff. It's like incredible how much they don't get it. And I also love that Graham Perrett line of, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Like, how the fuck does that apply to Palestine? What is the perfect? Like, expecting us to not be complicit in a genocide?
What is the good that's happening right now,
Exactly.
What is the compromise that you're sort of going for? They're so way off. It's extraordinary. But we like them doing that because then that means people like you can totally win. Thank you.
Yeah. And this is the thing. I think they make a mistake if they view this as purely, the Greens have pre-selected a Palestinian candidate to campaign on Palestine. And I thought that there was a quote right at the end of one of the articles announcing your candidacy from an unnamed Labor member that was attributed as someone not authorised to speak on behalf of Labor. But they said something like, the Greens won't do as well in the poorer parts of Moreton. That was their quote. And I thought, wow, so that's your understanding of this. That is the depth of your understanding of the campaign that the Greens are trying to win, to fight here in Moreton. They clearly have no idea. And maybe they have no idea of the fact that right now there are Greens campaigning in Miller, in the state seat, which Moreton overlaps. And that campaign is, I think, taking even the Greens by surprise by the receptiveness to the Greens policies on, capping rents, on, creating a public bank for cheaper mortgages and building more public housing and capping grocery prices. It's not just social issues. It is getting to the core of, ordinary people have been ignored by these big parties for too long, and we're offering a real alternative. Yeah,
I agree 100%. And I think I have received so many messages yesterday about Graham Perrett resigning. And I think my response was, I wouldn't be distracted by who's going to run, for Labor, because at the end of the day, we are fighting the ALP machine. This is the machine that spent $55 billion in fossil fuel subsidies in the middle of a climate crisis. This is the party that cut $14.4 billion from the NDIS. This is the party that's, complicit in genocide. So this is who we're up against. I don't care who runs for the Labour Party, because we are against all of these policies that the Labour Party are, in all the violence that the Labour Party is enabling, whether the violence against people or the violence against land and the climate. So I wouldn't be distracted by who's running for the Labour Party.
Yeah.
We have our own policies. We have our own values that we uphold. So I wouldn't be preaching for values. I mean, interesting, the article also mentioned values. I mean, I wouldn't preach for values if I can't really uphold them and vote for them in Parliament.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And have you been out, I guess, because you said, you left Labor, you didn't necessarily intend to get involved in the Greens, but this is kind of where you've ended up. Have you been doing any door-knocking campaigning with that Miller campaign in the state election? What's that been like?
Yeah, I door-knocked a few times for Liam in Miller, Liam Fennelly in Miller. And I've seen, I've talked to a lot of locals who expressed their, frustration with the current political system. And they seemed very detached. They felt that they are disfranchised from the political landscape. They felt that, look, what hope can we get? There's no change. And I had quite a few of those conversations of, we don't think that anything's going to change. These parties are just working for their own interests. And it was just talking to these people about the things that matter to them, and then realizing that, we're all fighting for the same thing. Why aren't we, why aren't we getting anywhere if we're all fighting for the same thing? If we all struggle, we all have shared struggles here. Where is the change? Why is it not happening? And I think the first thing that, I think the first thing we need to do, and to something other people pointed out to before, is we need to vote for that change. And I think the system also feeds on our hopelessness. It feeds on our exhaustion and our detachment from politics, so that we think, well, change can never happen. We got to trust the political establishment, and we got to just fuel that capitalism, because all we need to do is to pay our rent, pay our mortgage, put food on the table, and try and get by day by day. The system feeds on that. And I don't think that this is not sustainable in any way. And if you've learned something from history, is that tables are going to turn at some point. And I think that this is the time that we make real change.
I will never forget, the night of the 2022 federal election, and the party, and Max got up to speak, and the first thing he says was, they said we couldn't do it. And that, I keep that in the back of my mind, because, like you say, the major parties feed on that hopelessness and the idea that things can't change. But, if you're looking at Moreton, and is it possible, the swing that the Greens got in Griffith in 2022 to win was a 10.9% swing. If you got something like that in Moreton, you could win the seat. And a lot of people are saying, I think you're absolutely right that Graham Perrett will be replaced. It sounds like he's going to get replaced by Julianne Campbell, the Queensland Labor State Secretary, or something. That's kind of already a done deal as it seems. He'll be replaced by another Labor person, but there may be some incumbency bump that he gets, he might lose. That could be worth, his personal profile could be worth as much as 5%, some people are saying. But the massive campaign on the ground right now that's happening in Miller, and that the Greens are planning to win, to run in Moreton, that's possible. This is genuinely, it is possible. And I think it's got that kind of fighting spirit that makes me believe that it could be possible. So it makes me very excited. I know that we're almost out of time, but I wanted to hear your thoughts on one thing, because we have heard this week, Peter Dutton, the opposition leader in the federal parliament, Peter Dutton's comments around refugees from Gaza. And this is one thing that surely just makes my blood boil. So he first published this op-ed in the News Corp papers, arguing that Labor is letting Hamas sympathisers and anti-Semites into our country. That's a quote, of course, by failing to conduct adequate security checks on refugees from Gaza. And then he went on Sky News to call for a total ban on all Palestinians entering Australia due to, quote, national security. I mean, how have you felt watching that play out? And what does it do to, I guess, the fire inside you, do you think?
Look, I was not surprised. It's not shocking coming from Peter Dutton, to be honest, but that's not to say we should not stop here and call it out for what it is. So what Peter Dutton is doing is he's normalizing a certain narrative around Palestinians. He's reinforcing the stigma around Palestinians, and that's violence. And people need to understand this is violence, and he's enabling that violence to be normalized against people of Palestinian backgrounds. And look, I think that people understand that tired old politicians like Peter Dutton say things like that, and they don't understand that people in the community know that they have more in common with ordinary people. They have more in common with a refugee from Palestine than a tired old politician like Peter Dutton. So I was not shocked that these remarks came out of Peter Dutton's mouth. I mean, he said a lot of other inflammatory remarks in the past, but he needs to be called out for the violence he is enabling.
I'm in a different country, so I've certainly only followed this from a distance, but is it my understanding that after making those comments, there was a national media conversation about whether his call to ban all people from a certain country fleeing a war zone, fleeing a genocide, as you say, was racist, and he was seriously, deeply offended by this, and people like Erin Mullen were talking about being called racist is the worst possible thing you can say about another human being? Is that the kind of bullshit culture war thing that followed that?
I think he's threatening to sue one of the independents for calling him racist.
Oh my
God. Yeah.
Okay, just checking that Australia's still cooked, by the way.
We haven't changed, Tom. Don't worry. We'll still be the same when you get back. But
never changed,
just
Australia.
Absolutely horrific stuff. And like I said, just makes me even more determined to kick them both out, because that's the thing. This is the LNP. You expect it from the LNP, but you also, I think a lot of us at one point would have hoped that Labor would have actually stood up against that in some meaningful way, and opened its arms to refugees and said, well, yes, we need to sanction Israel, and maybe we need to look at the root of the problem. Why are people fleeing Gaza? Because of the genocide that Israel is attempting to carry out. But no, we get none of that, which is why we need more Greens in Parliament. We need more people like you in Parliament, Remah. Ideally hope that we can achieve that. How can people help make that happen? How can people support your campaign?
So because we're running a people-powered campaign, and I have to say that the amount of support that I received from people was incredible. I mean, I was quite overwhelmed, and it all happened overnight. And these are people who have never been involved in, any political engagement in any way. So to see that these people are willing to put the time aside to help with this campaign was truly incredible. And also I've received a lot of love for my sunglasses.
In the video where you take this, yes.
I think that one of the things that people can do is to sign up to volunteer in the campaign. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to center the concerns of of marginalized communities who we know that they major parties have been capitalizing on the demographic significance of a lot of communities. And in this campaign, I'm like, no more. See those concerns that matter to those communities. I want to center them, and I want to put them front and center in these campaigns. So even if people don't want to volunteer within the campaign, I would welcome the opportunity to get in touch with me and to go and meet with these communities and talk to them about the things that matter to them. Another thing is, because the Greens do not take any corporate donations. So donations are also very important for this campaign. Just attend the events that we are running. The kickoff rally and picnic is going to be on the 1st of September, 10 o'clock in the morning at Yeronga Memorial Park. So come along. There's going to be live music. There's going to be food and activities for everyone. And of course, speeches. We've invited some community representatives to speak about the change that they're hoping to see in politics. So it's more about the communities. We want to bring communities together. And we think this is an opportunity for people from all backgrounds to get together and connect. Come along to the kickoff event, sign up to the volunteering, to volunteer in the campaign. One of the things that we're trying to do through this campaign is to empower people through political and civic education, even if people don't want to volunteer in this campaign. We just think that we want to provide this opportunity for people in the community so that they can take this education and be change agents within their own circles. So once we start advertising for these events, please sign up and join these events. There are a lot of exciting things happening that I'm not allowed to talk about them now until we have,
sizzle.
There's one of the events that we're having is we're having a housing forum with Max Chandler-Mather and Liam Kennedy on the 5th of September. That's also on the website. People can have a look and join us. There's also the grassroots movements and electoral politics that's happening on the 21st of September. So we're trying to rock the boat here and talk about things that matter to people, things that, for instance, we might run workshops that target the young people, or run workshops that target women. And as I said, people don't have to volunteer in this campaign to participate in those workshops. We just want to give this empowerment out to the community because we believe that it's the people who can make change. And I remember at some point I felt so hopeless about politics in this country because I thought, what are our chances here to make real change? And it was truly this realization that hope comes from the streets. Strength comes from the streets and from people who believe in change. And if anything, if electoral politics can help in any way, it's by realizing that grassroots is the end. It's not only the means, grassroots is also the end. And I remember when I told someone that I might run for federal parliament and they told me, oh, well, no one's going to roll out the red carpet for you. You're going to, roll up your sleeves and do the work. I'm like, I don't want to ever open a red carpet. I want to open the ground. And this should be the only path to Parliament.
Yes. Fuck. Okay.
So, yeah.
I'm fine. I'm excited. Yes. We're going to fucking win, Moreton, guys.
Yes, we will.
We're going to put the links to your website, and there'll be the donate links, the volunteer links, the events coming up. If you're in Moreton, Brisbane, or south of Brisbane in Moreton, get along to those events. If you're not in the rest of the country, this is a huge opportunity for the Greens nationally. So if you have any spare cash, please throw it Remah's way so she can employ organisers and get this shit on the road. Thank you again so much, Remah, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. It's great talking to you.
Thanks, Remah.
Serious danger to Australia.